we're just waiting. I thought the easiest thing, this is going to be a 2-hour session, and if you could put your phones on silent, that'd be great. Send the chat directly to me rather than Tyler, because it gets sent to him and I have to ask him, and I can see it on here anyway on my second screen. So feel free when I ask you to send some chat, send it to me. Now someone hasn't been able to put on their video. Let's just see if I can work out who. All right, has everyone got the facility to be able to put on their video, or is it just they're eating breakfast, lunch, or something? All right. Great. Fantastic. We will be requiring it in this session and the next session. Alrighty, I think we get a kick on because we do need to finish in 2 hours. This is going to be a very interactive session. We're really going to be getting into the models, the communication models in this session. So as I mentioned before, send the chat to me, phones on silent, 2-hour session. Let's start off with a bit of a recap from where we were. So introduce you to the whole brain thinking model. And as we go through this recap, if you could just send any questions you have to me from the last session. You don't have to ask questions, but feel free to ping them, and at the end of this recap, I'll address any that are out there. So the whole brain model, 4 quadrants, 4 very different ways of looking at the world, thinking about the world, and you can overlay behaviors onto those models. You can use it for planning, for that model, you can use it for planning, you can use it for communication. There's lots of different applications which we'll be using today. But the HBDI part is essentially where your preferences sit within that 4-quadrant thinking model. It's about preferences, it's not about strengths, and you can build strengths in areas of low preference. It's just generally much more difficult. We looked at the elite consulting model. The concept is to have whole brain thinking behind this. So whole brain planning, whole brain understanding, whole brain responding, so taking a holistic point of view. And today, or in this session, we're going to look at whole brain planning and understanding. So we're moving into that section there and deep diving into that based on where we were yesterday when I introduced you to whole brain discovery. Which brings us quite nicely to whole brain discovery. The idea is if you are taking a brief from someone, you should understand their challenges, their current situation, what they want as an individual, and especially what outcomes they're trying to achieve. From there, you'll be able to address their challenges, help them achieve their outcomes based on an understanding of the situation and what they're looking for. And what that does is sets the ground rules or the foundation for persuasive communication, which is what we'll be looking at in the last 3 sessions. So you gave me some really good examples. Keeping it simple, there are some examples there. And the last thing we covered was a setup for today, which is to read a very, very simple brief on Kai McLennan's, who's the IT operation manager at Apple Republic Clothing Manufacturers. Hopefully you've all had the opportunity to read that and have a think about how you might set up the meeting and what questions you will ask, because this session is essentially on how you set up the meeting and what questions to ask. So looking at the questions from a recap, how does HBDI and MBTI align? Top they. Okay. Do they? Right, okay. They are very different. So Myers-Briggs, MBTI, for those of you who've done it, is a Jungian-based personality tool rather than a thinking preference tool. It's much more complex. In Myers-Briggs is a much more complex piece. So people find it's great. It's really good on depth, but it's quite difficult for you to remember. It is quite difficult to, you can use both. A lot of the time we've used Myers-Briggs and HBDI together, works really, really well. We tend to use MBTI Myers-Briggs for coaching on a long-term basis because of its complexity, and HBDI, especially when we're looking at communication skills, because the ability to overlay communication onto the thinking that's associated with it. So they are quite different. They come from a very different place. Both are validated. There are a few out there that aren't, and I won't mention them, but they're not very good. Both are very good, but they do different things in different ways. I'm sure if you look at it, there is some correlation because it's about self-awareness, but generally speaking, they can be used separately. And that was Andrew. Did that answer your question, Andrew?
It does. I get a lot of customers talking to me about Myers-Briggs and stuff. I've never really heard customers talking about whole brain.
Yeah. HBDI, it's actually huge, but it's not as huge. It hasn't been around quite as long as Myers-Briggs. Yeah. But those both are really good. They're great models, but they work on a very different way. So keeping it simple, one's personality based and one is thinking based. One is very flexible, which is the HBDI, and one is really more about understanding yourself from a personality basis. Okay, so let's get into today. We're focusing 100% on discovery, which is the core tool of consulting and consultative communication. We're going to kick off with a definition of what is an effective discovery meeting. Then we're going to get into how to structure good discovery meetings. Then we're going to break that down into how to set up the meeting, because that is something a lot of people don't think about, and you get it wrong and you don't end up having the meeting that you want. And then finally, the questioning model. Now, just a quick show of hands, how many people do have some form of discovery meeting with stakeholders? Probably should have asked this a little earlier, but...
Put two hands up. I have many.
Sorry, okay, you have lots, but
lots.
So nobody else asks. So only 3 people ask questions to the customers, to stakeholders, internally, externally. Okay, I'm not seeing, for some reason, could you put your hand up and just leave it up rather than putting it up and down? Because I've only got 1 person at the moment. Okay, why am I not seeing any? All right.
Tom does, Brendan does, Sergi, Chris,
Okay, great that you have. I'm not seeing it on my screen. That is really strange. Maybe only the host can see it. So there you go.
10 hands up by my count.
Sorry, 10 hands up.
10.
Great. Okay, so this is, I'm glad you said that, because if he did, I go, oh dear, we got 2 sessions of this. It's pretty important. If you're talking about really effective, persuasive, consultative communication, it's down to the questions you ask. Okay, so let's get into definition. I'd like to ask you a question now, which is, what is an effective discovery meeting look like? So we're doing this because this is the cornerstone for everything we're going to be covering for the next 2 sessions, and really is important to the entire course. I want to break it down and introduce you to the core elements, but first I want to get your ideas, and I want you to think back to a time that you saw either you saw or you were involved in or you ran a really great discovery meeting, and think and deconstruct what actually happened there. What made it so good? And could you send me the chats on your ideas of, just bullet points on what made or what makes a discovery meeting effective from your perspective? And then I'll introduce you to the course definition. So what is it from your perspective that made it so good? Please send it to me.
I'm trying not to write a book.
Okay, this is really interesting. I am not seeing anything. Are you getting anything on yours?
Do you want that to go to everyone or just the
you
host?
can send it. Oh, I'm getting them now. Okay, send it to me or send it to everyone, but I'm getting it now. So leading with the end in mind, setting up the expectations, the outcome to be achieved by the end of the meeting, people require an agenda confirmed. Very whole brain. Learn new information not previously known about a customer or a situation. Gain understanding, able to understand what is a customer's need. Very good. We're going to be looking at what that means. Validate assumptions. Great. Clear requirements for customer and good engagement. When there is an open communication with planned agenda. Here we go, Andrew, this is yours. Gaining insight into where the customer needs to go, why, and what that looks like, where they are now, why they can't address the challenge, what happens if they don't change or attain successful outcomes. That's really good. Andrew, have you done this course before?
I'm saying nothing. Yes, I have.
Right, okay. Fair. Nice definition. Succeeded in understanding the customer's pain points, had his thought process of what solutions line he is thinking of. Nice, yeah, great idea. Made good repo. Customers did most of the talking, gained insight. Very good point. Customers do most of the talking. You know, that is incredibly important. It hasn't been a great discovery meeting if you've done most of the talking. What else have we got? Questions about a green area. Okay, that's part of it. Introduction, ask questions, requests for now, brief the solutions. All right, look, fantastic ideas. I'm going to introduce you to the course definition. It's not supposed to be the right definition, but it is going to introduce you to the core concepts that we're going to cover from this point forward. Okay, so from our perspective, an effective discovery meeting is, and each line has a key point which I'm going to go through, it's a structured interaction that understands the needs of individuals and develops needs, enabling the most appropriate and persuasive solution. So each one of these lines contains a core point which I'm going to go through, and this in many respects will become the critique sheet or part of a critique sheet for when we run the role plays in a couple of sessions time. Okay, so the first one, it is a structured interaction. And what we mean by that, as was pointed out in the chat, is it has a clear beginning, middle and end, and it has a structure around it. Too many times people will just jump into questioning and there'll be confusion because they didn't start it really that well. The next part, and we're going to look at structure next, the next part is it understands needs. Now, someone mentioned needs, that understands the customer's needs. Here we go. Chandrindra, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Chandrindra, what is your, when we talk about needs, and you said it understands what our customers' needs are, how would you define needs? I think you might be on mute.
So I should be able to understand what I'm trying to solve, what our customers, what would be my scope, how would I define my scope, right? Because many times customer may not understand what they need unless you do a lot of questionnaire.
Yeah.
So understanding customer needs is important in terms of deriving at the use cases that I'm going to solve for them.
So that's why you want to understand customer needs. Okay. I got it. That's why you want to understand customer needs. Hi, Ben. We're just going through the definition of discovery. We're covering discovery today, and I went through the areas we're going to be covering, but work with us on it. Hopefully, just work on the timing, make sure you're on time because you'll miss this. So coming back to your point, what is a need? How do you know what a customer need is? A need or a want? How do you know what it is they need or what it is they want? What is the definition around an actual need? Because I understand why you'd need to understand their needs.
See, there could be a lot of circumstances if customer is running into problems and if the problems are not getting solved. If customer is looking for a solution that could be more easy and operationally it is efficient, time consuming. So there are a lot of factors which customer must be looking at and trying to, I would say again, need a solution that would better solve in all these parameters that I just
Okay. So what you said there is a customer, a need is when they have a problem. Yeah?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So there is another point, which is another area of need. and that is if they are, that's supposed to be an O, if they're trying to achieve an outcome. So either problems or outcomes and needs, and anything else is just information. If you walk in, thanks very much for your feedback, by the way. If you walk in, if you walk out, or if you have spoken to a customer in a virtual environment and you're taking a brief or you're trying to understand what they need, and if you remember that cross that we had, and it had in the blue quadrant it had challenges and the yellow quadrant had outcomes. If you walk away and you have no challenges and no outcomes, you have no needs. Anything else is just information. So we're looking at challenges and we need to walk away with challenges and outcomes that the individual has. And when I say individuals, it's going beyond just what the company is looking for, but delving down deep enough to understand from an individual's perspective what those challenges and outcomes might be. So what we're looking for here is questions that say, in your opinion, from your perspective, what are the challenges, or from your perspective, what are the outcomes? Because individuals make decisions about things, companies don't. So if you're talking to a stakeholder, a key stakeholder, you want to understand his or hers perspective of the needs. And I'm sure everybody on this call knows that every individual has a different perspective with regards to their needs. But you need to understand. Yeah.
That's a key point. Quite a lot of senior execs don't necessarily align on what those needs are.
Yep.
And things don't move forward because there is no consensus.
Very, very good point. And sometimes there's a flip side, which is they think that they don't align on their needs, but in fact they do. So I was pitching some work, it must be 10 years ago, and I was talking to the head of pre-sales. It was head of pre-sales, the head of services, and the head of sales. And when I spoke to the CEO, he said, look, the problem is none of them, they all think they need different things, but I think they probably need the same thing with their people. So I said, why don't I just interview each one of them, and then we'll get back together and see what's similar. So I interviewed each one of them, and I wrote down what outcomes they're looking for and what challenges. And when I presented back, I actually showed and said, look, you're actually all looking for your people incredibly similar challenges and similar outcomes. And they just went, oh, okay, this makes sense then, putting everyone together and doing something for the entire team. So understanding from everyone's perspectives, it can be a synergy or non-synergy, but certainly it needs to be an individual. Now, the concept of developing needs. If you've uncovered a need, let me ask, why would you want to make that need bigger? If you've uncovered a problem, why would you want the customer, the stakeholder, to see that problem as being bigger?
You could include the needs of other stakeholders that are aligned as well. Right, so more sponsorship and support. It increases the effectiveness of the solution once accepted, because you can apply it more widely across the organization to a larger number of problems. So a lot of the refinement is around finding a solution that solves more problems and wider problems in the organization than one that specifically deals with a narrow problem.
So if we take that point, if we had a need that someone says is, if they prioritized it, that addressing that problem, for instance, was number 500 in their priority list. If we were able to develop that to the point where it's top 10, there are a lot of value benefits to us, especially if you get frustrated with things moving slowly. I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but one thing that a lot of our clients are finding since COVID hit is that decision making has slowed down significantly. There's more people involved in this. So by developing the size or the perceived size of that need, you can speed things up quite a bit. Has anyone got any ideas? Could you, if you've got an idea, send me a chat. How might you, what questions could you ask to develop the need, to develop the perception of the problem?
If I may just
Sure.
share my opinion here. So in the past, what I've seen is with and this is through trying and testing method, if you ask a stakeholder about what they think of the problem and how it impacts them, and I think leading into the number of occurrences that occurred, that makes that problem sort of looks bigger in their opinion. So they're saying it aloud, hey, when was the last time it occurred for you? Oh, it happened a month ago. Oh, how often does it happen? Oh, oh, it's not so bad, once a quarter or twice a quarter, then it's not a big enough problem. But if you can get them to describe it, and then if it's a big enough problem and there are 10 of them, you get them to say, okay, well, you just told me 10 problems. What are the top 3 in your mind that needs to be addressed to move forward? Then you start sort of shortlisting it. And I think that seemed to sort of work to go to the next step, which is what I've seen, yeah.
Great, and we've got quite a few people agreeing with you. What's the implication? What's the impact? Do you know of any organisation experiencing the same problems? But we've got another one, discuss about the impact of the challenge, understand how it affects the company. Very good indeed. Yes, Andrew, you've obviously done this. It must have been a while ago though. Good, it's a refresher for you. Do a workshop involves their users. So one of the things that a lot of, and you were talking about as well, is the idea of developing needs using this concept of impact-based questioning, which is getting them to think about what the impact is, in particular if you put a time frame around it. So it's great when you ask this to a client, as long as you ask it in a consultative fashion, not in a sort of salesy fashion, which is, so if nothing happens for nothing changes for the next 6 months, and in 6 months' time, say, you're still experiencing the same problem, what could the impact be? And it's amazing how people will come back and say things like anything from nothing, which is unusual, but to the extreme, which is I won't have a job anymore. So getting people to start thinking about that problem and bring it to a head is a fantastic thing to do from a psychological perspective. From a purely consultative perspective, it works brilliantly to help them prioritize which problem to address first. And from a facility, if you ever do any facilitation, ask them where they currently are now, where they need to be, what the challenges are, and then going through the challenges and asking what the impact of those challenges are, get them to prioritize them based on impact. You can get they'll turn around and say, that was amazing, I didn't really think of things that way, just because you've used a very simple model, which we will be using in a moment.
What I've also seen, I just want to add for I guess another point here. I've also seen challenging a customer, I guess, is also a good way of getting them to open up and think of you as somebody who's trying to be consultative, because otherwise what happens is you go on the agenda that's been set, you talk about it, it's all about them, and you say yes, yes, yes. But if you don't ask, okay, well, why haven't you thought about it this way? Or why is that important? Or what if that doesn't happen? Then they automatically start thinking, okay, well, there might be an alternative way. That also has worked. And I've got customers sort of came out of the meeting and said, well, nobody has actually challenged our thought. Why are we doing it this way? And everybody and this is sort of a tender type or RFI, RFP type, presentation, discussion, discovery, where everybody's in a selling mode and, how much you want, when you want it. And I think questioning a customer is probably a good way to sort of establish that rapport as well.
It's a great way, and you rarely can go wrong. I mean, we'll talk about, are there stupid questions? Yeah, there are some stupid questions, but generally speaking, you can't go wrong with asking questions, but you can go horribly wrong by suggesting solutions or coming up with a solution. So there's a big difference between asking, why is that important to you, and saying, why don't you do it this way? So I 100% agree with you. Once you've got this information, once you've been able to uncover and understand their needs, which are the challenges and outcomes, from an individual's perspective, develop some of those needs so we've got a bit of a higher prioritization, then you can use this information to create the most appropriate, because you understand where they're coming from, what they're requiring, and persuasive, because you can make it relevant to the individual. So what we're going to look at now is a model that does that. And it's great, and I'm not just saying this, that you all seem to be on a similar mindset, and I think this is interesting because we have quite a lot of diversity in the group, but it's great you've got that mindset. So I'm going to first introduce you to this, what we call the hamburger model, which some of you may have heard of, may have been introduced to. We're going to use it for discovery. I'm first going to just introduce you to the concept. There isn't a document for this one here because it's really, really simple. And then we're going to break this down and look at each of the beginning, middle, and end separately. So BME, beginning, middle, and end. It's called the hamburger, which was a phrase that someone at NetApp came up with many years ago. They were looking at it and they said, that looks like a coffin. And I said, oh, that doesn't sound very good. And someone else said, looks more like a hamburger to me. I went, hamburger, I like it. So a lot of people in NetApp use the hamburger planner. The idea is at the beginning, set up the meeting well so the listener is ready and clear about what you're going to be talking about. The middle is ask questions to uncover need, which is outcomes and challenges, along with everything else. And then at the end, summarize and next steps. Now, this may seem really, really simple, and it is. However, I have personally missed that and created a huge amount of confusion for the person I was speaking to. I spoke to a CEO of a major organization. I went in there, I'd worked out all the questions, but I just went straight into the questions. And about 10 minutes into it, she said, by the way, what are we talking about? Literally, I hadn't explained what we were talking about or why or how we're going to cover it. But the core is at least get the person to understand what you're there to talk about. And then there's a few other little things you need to get into when you start a meeting that we'll cover in a moment. So just think for a moment, you're starting a meeting. What are some of the mistakes that you've made or mistakes that you've seen other people make that have sort of put a bit of a kibosh on the effectiveness of the rest of that discovery meeting? Any ideas from anyone?
Too many assumptions.
Yeah. So going in with
validating those.
What about actually? I mean, imagine somebody having a meeting with you. I had a meeting with you, and if I had a meeting with you and I wanted to run a discovery meeting, you may not be aware we're running a discovery meeting. You may think I'm there to present. That happens quite a lot, where people think that someone's coming in to present something, and I just start asking questions. From your perspective, what would you be looking for at the beginning of the meeting? What would be important to you to establish the beginning of the meeting?
Setting up the agenda. It's like, why are we here? What are we going to discuss and things like that.
Right. So certainly
frame the meeting so you understand what the meeting's for and what the outcomes are, especially as well.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just introduce you to some of the common mistakes we've noticed. Now, bearing in mind, the idea here is that people are meant to be setting up these meetings to talk about bigger picture solutions, not being overly specific. These are the top 5 we've come across. So the mistakes are they don't establish credibility as a solution provider. So first time you've ever met this person, and who are they that's going to be asking these questions? And that requires, the impact of that is the discovery is really limited. So you only end up talking about technical needs. There's a lack of clarity of topic, such as my example. So that creates confusion of what we're talking about. The topic is too product or issue specific, so it's too myopic in its approach. So you walk in there and you say, I want to talk about flash storage. You know, it's just too specific, and that's all you're going to be talking about. So the discovery is very limited. The topic is not relevant to the stakeholder, so essentially they're bored. What's this got to do with me? Oh dear. And they don't gain permission. The person doesn't gain permission to ask questions, so there's a lot of confusion why they're being asked all these questions. So if we're going to set up the meeting, we need to set it up appropriately. So let's look at this now. there should be, let me just fast forward. Okay. So as we go into this, you might want to take a photograph of this. I'm also going to give an example of what this might look like. So we're also going to be sending you this. It's actually in your pack. I'm trying to think where it is. I might fast forward if anyone. No, let's stick to the screen. But I will be sending you this. It's in your pack. So yeah,
it's interesting to note that the colors are in the reverse order to how you would construct your solution pitch. So solution pitch goes from green, which is current state, to yellow, which is future state, to blue, which is logistics, down to red, which is personal gain and loss, right? Emotional.
Yeah, I think I think it's a very, very good point. I think the important thing here is that these are models rather than processes. So as long as you cover off how you start the meeting in a whole brain way, it doesn't matter so much. We've put it in who, what, why, how. It's a whole brain way of setting up a meeting. It means everyone's happy, and the who is optional, because if they already know you, you don't need to do it. But the idea here is that you start off by, if they haven't met you before, establishing credibility for you or the organization, but primarily as you. So, and setting up in such a way you can gain an agreement, or at least position the meeting to have a bigger picture conversation. And the other one, which is gain permission to ask questions as you go through this. I mean, those are the two basics. So establish credibility, state the topic you wish to investigate, explain why you want to ask questions, and then if appropriate, let's not get too hung up on it. I know green is my lowest area. Someone's trying to get in. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So how, which is just a general idea of the areas, not the questions, but the areas you're going to cover. I thought I might give you an example of this. Can I have a thumbs up if you'd like an example of this? Okay, I will give an example of this then. All right, so this is how we. Oh, that's an interesting. Not quite a thumbs up, but I'll take whatever that is. Righty-ho. So let's take the first one. Okay, so this is how we set up a meeting for total interaction. So the first piece is something like this. Just get it to work there. Okay, so I might start off by just saying, so do you know much about us? Do you know much about me? First time we've met, invariably people go, not much, or a little, or they tell me what they know. How about I provide a very short introduction which is relevant to our conversation? Sure, I've never had anyone go no, ever. So we work with 20 out of the top 10 Fortune 500 IT companies, such as NetApp, Oracle, etc., Adobe. Our success primarily comes from building learning solutions that address the needs of the business as well as the needs of the people. So that's how that's as simple as that. It should be no more than 20 seconds long. So we're here to discuss your team's, in this case, enablement requirements. And the more I can understand about the outcomes you're looking for and the challenges your people are experiencing, the more relevant I can make our recommendation and appropriate I can make our recommendation when we come back. So I'd really like to ask some questions, if that's okay. So tick, normally get a nod at that point. Now, generally, I thought we'd start off by understanding what you're trying to achieve with the business in light of your people requirements, but primarily focus on the business. And then let's move specifically into your people's needs. Does that sound okay to you? Great. And we're off. And we start talking about the business. Now, what we've done there is we've set this up right from the beginning that we do talk about business as well as people, but we're not going to ignore the people. So just like you might say, we do talk about the specific technical needs, but in light of the business needs. And we do have credibility to do that. We clearly state the topic, but not make it too myopic, make it bigger picture, general enough for us to have a wider conversation. Then get buy-in into asking the questions, and then provide an overview of those general areas that you're interested in. Now, if you have got a photograph. If you have got a phone which is able to take a photograph, feel free to take a photograph of that, because I will be putting you into rooms and asking you to work on your own version in Teams. But I will throw it out there and see if there is anyone with any questions about that. Andrew.
Yes. So I guess it's just context, really. So typically for us, PS consultants and stuff, in your who's establishing the credibility of the company, that's probably already been done by the account team. And I think it's probably more a personal credibility or what our team is, rather than going into what the company does.
Sure. So there's a couple of things about that, and one I'd like to pick up. We do a huge amount of research on this, and if you haven't already heard about the person who called Dr. Robert Cialdini, who literally wrote the book on influence and persuasion, definitely worth a read. He looks at 6 key principles of persuasion, and one of them is authority, establishing your authority. So a couple of really interesting things that came out of that book. The first one is getting somebody else to do this is actually better than you doing it, even if that person isn't credible. So if you can get the account team to ensure that they do the first bit for you, about you, give them a couple of bullet points, that's a great way of doing it. And a lot of time they'll forget, so you'll still need to do it for yourself. The other piece about authority is if you've ever come across the concept of elevation through association. So the focus for you is about you. However, you can build your personal authority by associating yourself with people or projects or organizations, whether they're attached to you or your company, that you've been involved in some way, shape or form, and that builds your authority. Yeah. So it's building your own personal authority because you're asking the questions. I totally agree. I suppose I do this because I'm the CEO and I built the company up, and I didn't put, so that would have been a good one to put in, that I'm the global CEO. That would have been a good one to put in because titles do make a difference. So 100% agree with you. If you can get someone else to do it better, and certainly you're trying to build your own authority rather than necessarily the company's. Okay, so let's do this. If you could, in a moment, go to document 5, which is in your pack, Whole Brain Beginnings document. And in your group, so we're going to put you into 4 groups. We'll call them A, B, C, and D. We're going to put you in 4 groups, and in your groups, I want you to think about how you might start the CHI meeting using this type of document. So one person maybe populate the sheet in your group, in your breakout group, for everyone else, and then we'll share it when we come back. You're going to have 7 minutes to do this, which should be enough, but it doesn't give you a huge amount of time to have mass discussion. The reason we're doing this is tomorrow we will be actually running real role plays, and this will give you some great ideas of how you might want to set up your other meeting that you haven't been briefed on. So this is just to learn the model. So Tyler's going to put you in 4 breakout groups. You'll find you're in A, B, C, or D. You'll have 7 minutes to complete this. Feel free to download it now. Oh boy. Let's change that. Okay.
Let's give them 60 seconds.
Okay.
Back
I hope that was back.
and back.
All right. Okay, I'm just going to try and find my. That's interesting. Ah, there we go. We work out. Someone high green, thank you very much. Okay, we'll be everyone else will be coming back in.
That looks like a massive bottle of water, Suji.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I know, right?
Looks like one of those things you put on those, the drink.
Yeah, I know the one. Yeah, from a dispenser.
I like how when you drank out of it, you were showing off your guns as well, mate.
I say, Serge, you've got it wrong. Normally people use piccolo cups and say they've got big hands.
Somebody told me I need to drink at least 2 liters, and I don't. So I'm like, if I put it in a bottle, if I have to finish it by 4 or 5 p.m., that meets the requirement.
Okay, everyone's back. That's fantastic. What I want you to do is, I should have mentioned, pick someone, whoever's doing the typing. The person doing the typing can share with us what they did. Are you able to share screen? Let's look at Team A. Whoever was in Team A, let's look at Team A, and whoever was doing the scribing for Team A. What have you got?
I forgot what team we were in.
C. We were Team C.
Nah, Bhavin, Team C.
No, B.
Okay.
I moved across for 3 different teams. So yeah, pick one.
C was yesterday, Barb.
Okay, let's just.
How about I just start?
Yeah, please. That would be brilliant. Okay, I'll stop sharing on my side. Let me just stop share. Okay, so over to you.
Okay, so we kind of start off with the who part in terms of establishing rapport, introducing ourselves, a little background, and even some of our qualifications, just to show that we know what we're talking about. And then, if at all possible, also maybe talk a little bit about the customer, the person we're talking with, just so to show them that we have a little bit of understanding of what their business is and type of things that they do, and just kind of show them that we've done a little homework on them as well.
Okay, when you do this for real, which will be tomorrow, what I'm looking for is for you to populate that with the qualifications and the credible evidence there. And preferably something that positions you as a solution provider, so something that talks about not just understanding the customer's business, but how you can, by understanding other people's business, give them an optimum result. So just bear that in mind as we go through it. Then the what are the, okay, so the what here is, what are the problems with your current, okay, so you've gone straight to the problems. Why wouldn't you just say to, okay, if we up level this a little bit, just go a little bit more yellow than blue, you've gone straight into the problems with the current infrastructure. That's very specific on the problems. Why couldn't you just keep it maybe at talking about your IT infrastructure? Just keep it at that, rather than necessarily going straight into the problems, because it's a bit bigger picture than just the problems. So I would take out the problems with, and I would just say, investigate or understand your current infrastructure. Actually, it's a bit more current. It's not just current infrastructure. It's to talk about your IT infrastructure rather than the current, because that's the bigger picture of this. Yeah. Then the why: better understanding to provide customer solutions to meet their needs. Okay, what does that mean?
So basically, we have an idea of what it is that's bothering the customer or what their pain points are. It will give us a better view, so we can start to put together potential solutions that might help or alleviate some of those issues or problems or concerns.
Okay, and you're giving an example of how you've been able to do that in the past with a similar industry vertical, is it, in the why?
Correct.
Okay, great. And then did you get to the how?
No, we didn't get that part.
Okay, the how generally, it's really useful to have the what, the how, because it does set a bit of a framework. It could be, we'll start off with understanding what you're trying to achieve from a bigger picture perspective with regards to infrastructure, and then we'll delve down into some of the specific areas. So just giving them a bit of a framework. Great, look, it's a good start. Let's look at the next one. I'm going to go, what team were you in? Do you know what team you were in?
A, B, or C, I think we were told.
Brilliant, A, B, or C. Fantastic.
B.
Okay, will somebody else share your screen?
I think we were A, so I'll go next.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I can share the right screen.
You, Brendan? Okay.
I think that's the right screen.
Okay, yep, absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, look, that's just as obviously the quick introduction, introduce yourself, saying we've been working for NetApp for professional services organisation for 5 years. Then obviously elaborate that if the customer doesn't know who NetApp is, just a quick one-liner. So hybrid cloud data services, data management, and compute and data storage is obviously relevant to this particular conversation.
Okay.
I'll
just stop you there for a sec. So 5 years is anything below 5 years is not probably going to add any credibility, but from a perspective, whoever you were talking about, it is easier when you talk about one individual. Most of you, if you've been at NetApp 5 years, you've probably been in the industry for quite a few more years. And there's no harm in mentioning that if you've got, say, 20 years experience in the industry, working at senior corporate levels or working with companies similar to the person you're speaking to, definitely the time to put that in there. Moving on to the what?
So we're here to discuss your team's desire to modernise your IT infrastructure, and in particular, your compute and storage elements.
That's lovely. Very, very clear, not too specific, reasonably broad. You've got to think that this could be the third or fourth meeting, especially with virtual. It could be the fifth or sixth meeting they've had. What are we here to talk about? Great, so perfect. Let's move on to the why.
So yeah, we'd like to understand more about your IT infrastructure, and in particular, good timing, any major areas of concern to allow us to assist in developing a meaningful recommendation.
Great, and going green.
Yeah, we'd like to start by understanding a little bit more about your current IT infrastructure and how it's meeting your business objectives.
Very good. I have to say, this is possibly worth a picture. That's good. It's obviously you could build a little bit more into the red on credibility, but from a general perspective, spot on. So good stuff. Well done, team. Let's move to the next person. Anybody can jump in who hasn't done it.
Go Ben. Go Ben.
Okay. Let me grab my screen's disappeared again. Hang on a sec. All right. So this is ours.
Okay. Oh, I am. My role is where the customer's doing X, Y, Z. It's a little general, isn't it?
We were trying to keep it high level. I did raw. Yeah. He couldn't type as quick as I was talking.
So I'm So Andrew, you can do the I'm Andrew Campbell Lang, right? My role is principal consultant, executive architect at NetApp, working with customers to help align IT strategy to business outcomes.
Nice.
Previously worked with RWE, which is the largest energy company in Europe, as the CTO, and that and my previous experience means I'm well informed to be able to help you with what we're going to talk about today.
Fantastic, great intro and nice and tight, brilliant, love it. Moving into the what.
So what we want to talk with you today about is how does your IT department respond to the need for change in the business? How agile is it, and how well is it delivering outcomes for the business? And the reason we want to do that, and moving to the why, is because we want to understand what happens if IT doesn't demonstrate value to your business, right? We want to explore some of the internal, external impacts and the existential problem of IT, given the fact that you guys are looking at, a cloud strategy. What does that mean for IT?
Okay, so the only thing I would say is with the what is, I wouldn't position the what as a question, because now it feels like the next half hour is going to be spent on that one question.
Right.
So how could we change that question to just a topic? So
Bring IT's
explore, yeah.
responsiveness to the need for change.
So I would be more about help is probably a better one. Help
Sorry?
you know,
Oh, yeah.
help become more responsive to the need of change for business.
Okay, so Andrew, you're talking about the context of speaking to the IT director or the CIO,
Correct.
right?
And that's what this is, right?
I was
We wanna
actually looking at it
get
from
that
the
meeting.
perspective of the rest of the board, looking at the CIO, going, one of the board members, talking to one of the board members about how IT is performing for them. So I can see the difference in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Help you to explore IT's responsiveness. So coming back to from the inside out view. Yeah, that's it. There you go. Yeah.
Okay. And this is for Kai, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Kai is the IT manager, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And great. Explain how these questions help. Okay. Now you've gone into another question rather than explaining why you want to ask these questions.
Yeah.
So why is it what's the value to Kai from spending the time giving you this information? How is it going to help him? How's it going to help you? So this is getting permission to ask questions.
Yeah.
It's explaining.
The impact to IT if it does not demonstrate value to.
Yeah, I think the why is explain why asking questions will help you to help them. So it's kind of selling in the idea of why it's. A lot of people don't expect people to ask questions, and potentially they don't realize the value of questions. So you've got to say, this is the value of us asking these questions. Now, some people will be ready for it, some people won't. So just what is the, okay, but what's the value of it from a yellow perspective? Why? If I turn around to you and I'm Kai and saying, yeah, okay, but why do we need to spend any time? Couldn't you just, take a brief? Why do you need to ask me these questions? How's it going to benefit me?
Well, so identifying IT specific challenges so we can explore solutions.
Okay, so again, I'll play devil's advocate. Couldn't you? Why do you need to speak to me about this? Why do you need me to give you my opinion?
As head of IT, the responsibilities that we're aware of is that you need to make decisions about what IT procures and how IT delivers service to the business. So we'd imagine that would be a key topic that where we could explore some of these challenges and look at ways that we can help you.
Okay, so solidify, bringing it down to its basic element. You want to ask questions about IT's responsiveness to need for change in the business. You are assuming there is change because there is part of the brief. I sound like I'm just a stuck record, but rather than me telling you or giving my opinion on this, why do you want to ask questions? If you remember in the last one, I'm just looking at referencing now, the more I can understand about the outcomes you seek and the challenges your people are experiencing, the more relevant we can make our recommendation to you. So how could you translate something similar in this situation?
Well, we uncovered specific challenges around the way that you're operating, the way that you're delivering IT.
It's simple, but we're going to ask questions to them to understand how do they operate the business, how does IT respond to that, so that we can better align them to become more responsive.
Right, there you go. Write that. That's it. That's the value. So this is interesting. Sorry, who said that? I don't actually have. Andrew. Andrew, are you high yellow?
Yes.
Okay. So it's really interesting, isn't it, that these quadrants will come more naturally depending on what your thinking preferences are. And a lot of people will just say, but surely everybody thinks that way. Everyone does it. Everyone does it that way. I remember running a management training, a leadership management training session with quite a big ICT organization, and we were with all the managers, and I knew one of them, one of the best managers, best people managers I've come across. And she said, surely, Paul, everybody does this. Everybody thinks this way. And I looked at everyone else. They just went, nope. And we were talking about coaching. So different quadrants lend themselves to different thinking. And some it comes much more naturally to others. Then we go into the green, which is you're looking at business IT approach change, strategy, and internal, external impact. Great, that's fine. So I feel that there was maybe more green in the group than yellow. I don't know, but that's great. You got there in the end. Hopefully that's.
Interestingly enough, Andrew and I are both high yellow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it might just because when you're in a bunch of people with high yellow, you naturally assume that everybody's thinking about the outcome and it doesn't need to be articulated in that sort of succinct fashion.
I think
it's just assume we all know where we're going, right?
One of the problems that we had, and I noticed that we did when we were typing in, and I was putting in what I thought was a good statement for that particular box, was you were separating the what, why, how questions out and putting them in the what, why, how boxes. And I don't think that's the right approach, right?
No, yeah, because this is the beginning. This is the top part of a hamburger. So the concept of a hamburger is, the hamburger communication planner is like a hamburger. So you have the top bun, the bottom bun, and the meat in the middle. So let's not get into the meat in the middle. Let's look at the top bun first before we get into the rest of it. This is just setting up the meeting. It's the whole thing's a minute long, maybe a minute and a half long. So maximum of that. But it's just introducing who I am, what we're here to talk about, why I'd like to ask you questions, and just a general overview of some of the general areas we'd talk about. How's that sound to you? And they go, yeah, that sounds good. Okay, let's go into it. And then we go into the questioning. Awesome. Last group, whoever's left over who hasn't spoken on behalf of their group. Oh. Oh, there you go. Sandeep.
Yes.
Okay, let's have a look at what you have here. All right.
The introduction is as I said, been with NetApp for 8 years, in IT for 20 years, and last 10 years as an architect, designing solutions based on the requirements. There was a type of the. We at NetApp have been helping companies to transform and modernize their IT infrastructure.
Yep. Okay. So what you can do is pop in, if you're able to add that credibility. If you want to add that credibility to say the sort of organizations you work with, preferably the ones which are in here. If you have any in his industry vertical, would be fantastic. So let's have a look at the what.
What are we are here to discuss about the impending IT infrastructure refresh. As we understand, Apple Republic runs a large SAP manufacturing environment, which is running on heavily virtualized multi-vendor compute and storage environment.
Great, fine, yeah, nice and clear, and also shows you you know why you're there. So let's see about the why, asking questions. Well, we understand challenge. Yeah, go for it.
The more we understand about your challenges, it will help us to uncover the pain points and challenges in the environment, which will then be addressed in the proposed solution to help Apple Republic to focus on the core business and not to worry about the managing the IT infrastructure.
Okay, as long as you, I mean, I like it. Possibly a little bit assumptive on, I mean, we're assuming he doesn't want to worry about managing the IT infrastructure. So I'm not quite sure about, maybe it should be focused on the core business.
Yeah.
Yeah, because not everybody, you know, there are people out there that do, you know, that could possibly turn someone off by saying, not worry about the IT infrastructure. Sure. That's good. And okay, so an overview. So you want to know about
what is the new business / finance requirements for the upcoming solutions? Where do you see the business moving in next 5 years? What impact does the challenges or pain points have on business due to outages? How are you currently managing this?
Okay, so what we've gone in here is we've actually gone into the questions. So if there are a couple of areas, if you raise it up, because it's only the beginning, what would be the general areas, well, not the questions, but the general areas you might be covering? Say one or two areas, I suppose.
So predominantly it would be where the business is going towards in the next 5 years, because then the IT infrastructure can be catered for the next 5 years growth.
Right. Okay.
And as we see nowadays, right, the companies are running about with a stricter budget, so finance requirements, finance comes into the picture. So help us address that problem. If we address the finance issue at the start, then we are on the right page as at the customer.
Right. I like it. Just keep it general. Keep it very, very general at the beginning. And now we're going to go into the questioning. So good stuff. Hopefully that was useful. As individuals, you'll be given a brief, a more detailed brief, slightly more detailed brief. And you'll be tomorrow establishing the beginning of the meeting in the role play. So feel free to take on board what's happened here and utilize it tomorrow in the role play. So thanks very much. If you can take off your screen sharing, okay, and I'm going to go back to this. Okay, so we've started the meeting. Everybody's clear about who you are. Obviously, if they know you don't need to do it. Just to the side, by the way, what, why, how? If you want to speed up NetApp meetings, especially virtual meetings, think about the next meeting you have, whatever it is, just answer the 3 points, which is what, why, how. What are we doing? What's this meeting about? Why are we having this meeting? And is there an agenda to it? Whether it be a discovery meeting, whether it be a meeting, whether it be a presentation meeting, what, why, how will speed things up incredibly, and everyone will think you are incredibly focused because you've stated for everybody what, why, and how. When we have meetings internal here, and I've had people come on board at Total Interaction, we all start off the meeting and go, so what, why, how? And they say, oh, we're having this meeting because we need to do this in about 3 weeks' time. I thought I'd cover this, this, and this. And we're like, great. Okay, what, why, how? It speeds things up. Okay, so now we're into the middle, the meat of the hamburger, and the idea is to understand need. So I'm going to take you into a little bit more of a metaphor, a metaphoric concept of the iceberg. Now, you can look at an iceberg, and it is amazing that I'm told, I believe, from memory, 90% of an iceberg is under the water. So what you see on top is quite small, but what's underneath the water is massive. So what a lot of people do is they spend a lot of time just talking about what's on the surface, and they don't deep dive into understanding what's behind all this. And if they do just look at the surface, then they're just looking at situational information. What are they currently doing, what they've done before, what their current infrastructure looks like, what previous issues they've had, but they don't really deal with the needs at the moment. So that's essentially called no need. And at the end of this, I'm going to run a poll to see if you're able to, and it's going to be controversial. It will be controversial, it's always controversial, but I'm going to see how much how you can differentiate between no need and different types of need. So the first piece is, if it's situational information, just for facts, it's no need. If we delve down a little bit deeper, then we cover what's known as passive needs. So passive needs are problems that people are having or outcomes they want to achieve. They are generally low urgency. They don't have a desire to address them. They're just statements of we have a problem, or we do want to, we're supposed to achieve this outcome. But there's no urgency behind it. It's just stating the problem or the outcome. If we delve down deeper, we come to active needs. And that's what we really ideally want to be getting from a customer, which is their wants or desires. So a desire is a verbal urgency to address something. So they're saying they need to do something. They want to do something. They're giving a definite indication that this is something that they want to do something, that is a problem or an outcome they want to do something about to either achieve it or address it. So ideally, at the end of the day, a great discovery meeting walks away with, at the basic level, problems and outcomes that they're experiencing, but in an ideal situation, it delves down deeper into this active needs. And one of the best ways you can turn some of those passive needs into active needs is to ask impact questions. Because when you've asked them impact questions, you get people suddenly verbalizing they need to do something about it. So the first thing is to see if you're able to recognize the difference between active and passive needs. And I've got these statements here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a poll around them on every statement, and I'm going to ask you, is each statement a no need, passive need, or an active need? So let me bring up the poll and see what you think. All right, you're going to have 3 minutes, I would say, to do this. There will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different statements, and what I'd like you to do is to see what you think each type of statement is showing. Okay, here we go. Here's your poll. No need to do it on screen.
Out of 17.
This will be an interesting debate afterwards.
I know. And it does depend on how they say it, which we'll cover in active listening or empathic listening. Okay, we're at 88% voted, so we're just waiting for a couple more people.
Yeah, I recognize that iceberg, Paul.
Do you?
It's a good one. That one. It's a very effective visual for showing people there's a lot more than meets the eye, right?
Yeah. And in too many times, I know I've done it. I've walked away and thought, I really didn't delve down deep enough. I've just walked away with what's on the surface. 94%. So it's got to be just one person, I would imagine, to answer one question. Is there someone who hasn't answered a question? It seems to be stuck on 94%. Is anyone still doing this? Oh, I know, of course. It's considering that that Tyler and Ursula are still on, so that's probably why. Okay, let's end the poll. All right, so let's see. Sharing results. This is what you've thought. Okay, one, generally speaking, there was some people thought no need. Majority said passive need. Okay. Number 2, majority said passive need for 2. 3, large storage footprint, no need. Interesting, yeah. 4, 88% said active need. Response need of yeah. Lifestyle costs. So, okay. 5, life cycle costs are unknown. Only just passive need. 6, most people said passive need. 7, overall, 81% said active need, and 8. Some people said active, some people said passive, but nobody said no need. Okay, so this is what we feel. Okay, so first one, no need.
Yeah.
Data storage requirements are growing by 50%. It's just information.
It's a statement.
It's just a statement. However, I can tell you now that a lot of people think that's a passive need. Increasing hosting equipment costs are frustrating. They're frustrating, but doesn't mean they're going to do much about it, so it's passive. We've got large storage footprint. Thank you very much for that information. That's situational information. Good to know, though. I need faster response times. Okay, that's pretty active. That's what they want. Life cycle costs are unknown. Oh, that's a tough one. But it's just information, really. They aren't saying they need to do anything about it, or if they're not even saying it's a problem. It's just a fact. We can discuss this, I know, but we won't. We're interested in cloud solutions. Oh, that's an interesting one. Passive need.
You think? Ooh.
Well, you know,
the fact they're just saying we're interested in cloud, to me, it's just informational. You could explore it to make it passive or active.
I'm with you. In fact, the danger, there is a certain danger that when a customer says to you they're interested in a solution, there is a huge danger of people who go, right, let me show you our solution in that area. And they may think it's a need, but realistically it may not be a need. They actually may have, it's not really a need, it's actually a solution. So I'm with you. I'm with you. That could be a no need or a passive need. It's certainly not an active need. In many respects, it's what the customer wants as a solution, but it's not actually a need, because a need is either an outcome or a challenge. So I'm with you there. We must reduce deployment times. Yes, that is an active need, and we're experiencing service issues. It's just, look, that is an issue, it's a problem, but not necessarily something you want to do about it. The point here is you want to be looking and listening for triggers like we must, we need to, we've got to, and that's the point. If you've been able to gain that information from a customer when you leave, you've really got a good insight into what that stakeholder is looking for from a needs perspective.
Well, just on that, and just a quick question.
Sure.
One of the ones that I really struggle with there is that they say that our life cycle costs are unknown. Like, I mean, yeah, fine, like that from a perspective that they're going and saying, look, that's not really an issue. To me, I'm like going, hey, this is business. You're trying to actually run a business. So if you don't have costs, that is a significant problem. And therefore, I would consider that an active need.
Well, okay. So how could you change that statement into a question to get them to tell you that?
Well, I mean, is that not a problem in itself, you know?
All right. Well, why don't we change it around to if so? The question, the thing they say is, what was it?
Our life cycle costs are unknown.
Okay, so our life cycle cost is unknown. So if
what is the impacts of that? How is that damaging you? What do you not know? How
What-
is it not helping you move forward?
yeah, so
Is it stopping? Yeah.
thinking about this situation, thinking about that situation, what's the impact of that if you're in this situation and you don't know, you don't know what your, I'm still trying to find it. What was it? Oh yeah, if you don't know what your life cycle costs and you're in this situation further down the track, what might the impact be there? What your idea, many years ago, I was in sales many years ago in the Canary Islands, and I'm going back to when I was 19 years old, so literally another century ago. And my boss once gave me some really great information I'll never forget. He said, when you're talking to someone, if you want to be persuasive, he said, rather than you telling them, try and get them to tell you. Rather than you telling them what the problem is, get them to tell you what the problem is, or get them to tell you what they want in an ideal world, because they'll believe themselves much more than believing you. So it's essentially influencing through questioning rather than trying to push your opinion onto someone else's. So try and think of a question that will extract what's in your head out of their mouth. And this is called, there's a specific word for it. There was a philosopher in Greece, and it's, there you go, right. I knew it was in there somewhere. It's
Socratic
called,
method.
sorry?
Isn't that the Socratic method?
That's it. It's called Socratic questioning. So Socrates believed that if you asked the right questions to anyone, you could get the information out of them, whatever. And there's a story about him asking a shepherd boy specific questions. And by asking him questions, I think he was able to work out a very complicated mathematical problem. So it's called Socratic questioning. And the idea of being an exemplary consultant is you don't actually recommend anything until you've been able to extract the information that you need to be absolutely sure that your recommendation is spot on and you've developed a mutual understanding of the need. And the best way of doing that is, rather than telling people, is to ask them. And that can be very, very challenging if you're high blue, typically, and a high blue thinkers, because you probably want to tell them the problem rather than necessarily ask them. So hold yourself back from telling and ask the question, convert it into a question so it comes out of their mouths.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the point is I guess that there's also context that's required. I mean, body language and having these things visually, yep. Like you said, how the question sort of the tonality of the question and whatnot.
Absolutely. Yeah. If someone's saying, oh, you know, our life cycle costs are unknown, yeah. You're going to take a different piece. We're just taking the words, and that is called empathic listening or empathetic listening. And what you're doing is you're listening for the tone, the way it's being said, as well as what they're saying. But for now, we're just looking at the words. Okay, so I'm now going to introduce you to the concept of someone's coming in. Who's that? I don't know.
Sorry, that's me. I've just got to pick some sick kid up from school. I'm just going to swap over to the phone.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's going to be quite challenging from where we are. But I will verbally say as much as I possibly can when we use this later. And that's going to be interesting if you're going to be put into, in a moment, I'm going to be putting you into rooms to run a role play. Do you know what your role, I allocated you a role yesterday. I'll just try and see if I can jump to this. What was, sorry, who is it who's jumping out?
Group C, Tom.
Tom, you are I. So what's an I? Interviewer. Okay, we can live with that. That's good. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, lucky you weren't Kai. All right, so I'm going to introduce you to SOCIT questioning. This is definitely one that once we've populated this sheet that you will want to take a photograph of because we've got some reference material, but this will be really useful. So you're in the meeting, and what you want to do is you want to take a whole brain approach to discovery. So you're going to state the topic as you did before, and you're going to ask questions around that topic, whatever that topic was, whatever the what was, the topic you're going to be asking. So it could be, let's say your topic could be your infrastructure, and you're going to ask questions around that. We're going to use SOCIT, and SOCIT stands for Situation, Outcome, Challenge, Impact, Trial, and they're all colored in HPDI colors for the thinking preference it works towards. But first, and we mentioned this yesterday, it's good to start off. This is a model, by the way, it's not a process. So how you do this is up to you. But it really does work incredibly well if you do generally start off with the situation to understand the current situation. The situation and situational information is current or historical facts relating to the area of discussion. So let me get a clear idea of where you are right now. Then you're going to move into where you'd like to be. So that's the yellow orientated thinking, the outcome orientated questions. So this is where you are now. Where would you like to be? Which is the desired expectations, the outcomes, the results relating to the topic, which I've just called infrastructure. So what are the outcomes from your infrastructure? What are the results you're looking for? How are you going to recognize success? Then you understand where they are now. You understand where they want to be. Now what you want to do is find out what the challenges are, or the roadblocks between getting to from where they are now to where they want to be, which is the challenges. So they're issues, problems, challenges being experienced now, or roadblocks to achieving the desired outcomes. So visually you might want to look at it as current state, future desired state, gap, and then the challenges in that gap. Okay, so that is from a basic point of view, situation, outcome, challenge. If you cover those questions and you've got some great information there, you've done a good job. Now let's take it to the next stage. If you uncover a challenge that you can address and it's a passive need, this is something that someone High Blue told me and seems to resonate with a lot of people that I've spoken to at NetApp, which is let's pour some salt on the wound. High Reds hate that expression, but let's pour some salt on the wound and increase the level of pain. So it would be delving a little deeper into the impact of the challenge. Maybe it's the impact of the challenges to the bottom line, maybe it's the process, the people, future aspirations. It's whole brain, and we're going to look at that and break that down and see if you can workshop some impact questions depending on how you go in the role play coming up. Finally, we have trial. Now this is, a lot of people forget this, it's very high yellow. It's a hypothetical idea, concept, solution that you might throw at them as a what if you could, a what if statement. And this is really useful if you are ever involved in big projects or competitive projects where you want to test out your solution before you even give it and get an agreement in principle to that solution. And I remember running this in Sunnyvale, and someone said, we didn't do this when we were going for that bid, and that's where we went wrong, because we put forward the wrong recommendation and they didn't like it. If we had just trialed or tested it before we went away, we would have not gone down that track, because they would have said, no, that won't work for us because of this, this, and this. So someone said earlier, what about open and closed questions? Now, there's been a lot of research on this. So if you're asking questions to uncover that information, open questions learn and closed questions confirm. So open questions, now I'm assuming everybody knows the difference between an open question and a closed question, but I'll just throw it out there. Tom, could you give me an example of an open question?
What's your favorite color?
Blue, that's a closed question.
Yeah.
Turn that into an open question.
I'm not sure I can. Hang on, let me think.
Okay. Can someone turn that question? What's your favorite color? Because closed questions are. Okay. Admittedly, I can see where you're coming.
What color would you prefer for your new car?
Okay. Yeah, I can't say a singular answer. Confirming questions are closed confirming questions. So if I turn that into a really strong closed question, it would be something like, is a blue car, would a blue car be the sort of car that you're looking for? As opposed to an open question, which would be, ideally, what would be the, what colors would be, or what are you looking for with regards to the color of a car? I suppose probably not a greatest example, is it? Okay, terrible example from my perspective, but that was my fault, not yours.
Could you go, why? Why would you like that particular color car?
Okay, that would be a good open question, because now you're delving into a little bit more depth. A good open question. Let's think about this from a more, I suppose, practical perspective. If we were going to ask a question which was to understand the current situation, and we want to lead with open questions, so we want to keep it really wide. We don't want to get too specific because we can follow up with confirming questions. What would be a good situational open question that would understand their current infrastructure environment?
How is your infrastructure performing today?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Any other examples?
What are your top 5 pain points or plan to remove pain points?
Okay, that's a good question, but that would be a challenge. So why not just say, what are you currently doing? What is the current infrastructure? How are things right now? Okay, let's look at, and then you get information. Then you might follow it up with a confirming question, such as, so are you using this? Are you using that? Is it on-premise? Is it 100% on-premise? So you might follow up with some confirming questions, but keep it really wide. You're going to have a much better conversation. What about an outcome question? Could someone give me an example of an open outcome question which would understand the outcomes they're seeking?
What would solving this problem do for you?
Okay, we haven't uncovered the problem yet, though, necessarily.
What do you expect it to do for you?
Okay, so this is the infrastructure.
Yeah. So we know what it is. What do they want to achieve with it?
Okay, that's different. What do you want? Yeah, ideally, what do you want to achieve out of this? What outcomes would you like? What outcomes do you need? So this is such a good question, but so many people forget to ask, depending on what their thinking preferences are. High yellow thinking is instantaneously, what are you trying to achieve? Not what are you currently doing now. High blue thinking is more about what are the problems, not necessarily what you're trying to achieve. Think about, if you just ask that question about what you're trying to achieve, you're setting a goal for both them and also you to achieve in that area. So the more you understand about this, the more you can make your recommendation persuasive and relevant. Okay, challenge. So we understand the current situation, understand what they want to achieve. Now, what would be an open question to understand the challenges from
what is stopping you achieving the outcomes?
Yep, great. What are the roadblocks to achieving these outcomes? It's like you're reading my next slide. Fantastic. Okay, so they say, what might they say if they're talking about infrastructure? What are some of the typical challenges you come across that are hindering their ability to achieve their outcomes in infrastructure?
I'll let somebody else answer that.
Oh, sorry, I just put.
what impact does that have on your ability to get budget to do projects?
Yep. So depending on what their challenge is, it could be what's the impact of this challenge on whatever it is. What's the impact of the challenge on? Could be the business, could be, or you could just ask what's the impact of that. If nothing changes and it continues, you go, what's the impact of this? Sorry.
Second, we can ask how tough does it become for you to handle this challenges, just as in a sort of a red quadrant, getting into the individual.
Okay. So that's the interesting thing, isn't it? So challenges you can ask. Sorry, impact questions you can ask from a red perspective, what the impact, a blue perspective, yellow perspective, a green perspective. But certainly asking that impact and understanding what the impact is, it not only gives you an insight into the prioritization of that problem, but also brings it to head from them and they start thinking about what the impact is. Okay, now this is the one that I'm going to give you some tips on this one because a lot of people get this wrong. When I say wrong, they just verbalize it in a dangerous way. So what a lot of people say with trial is if we could do this or if I could do that, you don't want to take ownership of a trial question because the danger is that if I say, oh, if we could put a training course together that did this and this, would that work for you? And they may say no, and I've got it wrong. But if I change that to, if you were able to have a training session that was able to achieve these outcomes and address that problem there, would that work for you? Then I'm just asking a question. So with that in mind, the if you could or if you had, can someone give me an example? Preferably someone who hasn't given an example so far.
I'll shut up.
Yeah.
Not you, Andrew.
I'll shut up.
Sandbagger.
Okay.
Sort of, will you be open for some sort of cloud, opening up to the cloud architecture in the environment, considering that?
Exactly, yeah. So would you be open to this? If you were able to do this, would that work for you? That is exactly it, because what you're doing is just asking a question and they may turn around and say, as you may know, we can't move to 100% to the cloud because we have a policy that doesn't allow us to do that. And then you could follow up and say, have you ever considered what might be an alternative trial?
Maybe considering migrating the low-hanging workloads to the cloud environments. That doesn't impact your productivity.
Yeah, and as long as you said, have you ever considered, rather than what if we did this, it's a great way of just testing and trialing how they feel about ideas. It's just testing the temperature.
Could you propose here what the industry peers may be doing in this area as
absolutely, as long as it's not you. So as long as you're not saying, well, we did this in another situation, would that work for you? But if you say, so for instance, another bank or another manufacturing organization, they implemented this because it was able to do this, how would that work for you? I think that'd be fine as a trial.
So that's a really good strong point. So I use that quite a lot. Your competitors are doing, have you thought about?
Yeah. Have you considered this?
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Because when you're in the weeds, I think you kind of miss out on seeing what the trends are and what others in your industry are doing about it. So if you highlight it as a customer, if you think about it, so somebody in my competitor or someone in a similar industry already looked at it, they've obviously gone through a validation of it to implement it, so might as well, give it a bit of a preference or have it as an option. So yeah, I like that.
And you can link some of that back to the outcomes where they say we want to be the leader in, or we want to be, the industry standard for X. You can turn around in the trials and say, well, your competitors in that landscape are doing X, Y, Z. Have you thought about what you're going to respond to that?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And it again, I'm not trying to use my personal preference as an excuse, but I do understand challenges of becoming for me, using this as a process. Some people use, I mean, I've seen people use this as a process to such an extreme. Someone who was extremely high green, 135 in green, I remember him years ago. And we ran a role play, and he gave a piece of paper and said, can you fill this in? Situations, outcome, challenge. I was, whoa, no, it's a model, it's not a process. It doesn't really matter if you go outcome, situation, challenge, outcome, challenge, impact. The only thing here is you can only ask an impact question after a challenge. You can throw in trials, whatever point, but when you walk away, you really do need to understand where they currently are, where they want to be, what challenges they're experiencing, what the impact of those challenges are, and ideally test or trial some thoughts and ideas to get a feeling of how you should come back with a solution. If you can do that, and it's not easy to do it, but if you can do it, it's quite amazing what the response of the customer is. Many times they'll come back to you and say, this is incredible, it's like you read my mind. But that's kind of what you did, you just extracted it from them. To be able to come up with a solution that not only works for them, but is also highly persuasive for the individual and highly consultative.
That's a good point. The bit you picked up on there about writing down all the questions and treating it as a process flow. I get asked frequently before workshops, can you give me a list of all the questions you're going to ask the customer? And I say, no, I cannot. I can give you an agenda and topics I want to talk about, but consulting is dynamic. We go to the next question based upon the previous, right?
Absolutely. And that's exactly why, Andrew, when you're setting it up, when you get into the how, you're not going into the questions. You're just saying, look, here's an agenda of the sort of areas we're going to be covering. And as we get into this, who knows where we go? Because questioning is organic and it can go anywhere. You never really know when you're talking to a human being where you can end up, which is what makes it so interesting in many respects.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I'm currently working with a.
That was a perfect answer. Can you video that and send it to me, and I can send it to some sales reps?
Yeah, I'm working with a client right now where some of the interviewees were very hesitant to participate because we didn't send a very explicit, detailed list of questions to them several weeks before.
Yeah. And what you can do is you can send them. Now, you may be dealing with a very high green culture. So, for instance, when you're dealing with certain government departments, or government-like departments. So, for those of you who work with certain telcos in Australia that I'm dealing with at the moment, I mean, they're great. The people are great, and they're whole brain in many respects. The diversity is whole brain, but they work within a government orientated environment where they need or they want that clarity up front so there's no surprises. So send them the outcome based questions. So the questions we're going to be asking are around your current situation, what you're doing in that current situation, the outcomes you're looking for, the challenges or roadblocks you're experiencing now or to get to where you need to go. We're going to look at, once we've got that information, look at some of the impact and prioritize some of those challenges. And then based on that, we might test, depending on what comes out of it, we may test or trial some potential solutions. That's normally enough for most people to go, okay, I have an idea of where we're going. And for those of us who are more open to ambiguity, we might not see the frustration of not getting anything, but there's normally a common ground somewhere there.
Agreed. To me, as a high yellow, if somebody gives me a list of questions, I don't need to attend the workshop. I'll just respond on the email.
Yeah. I know. Okay, so in your materials folder, you don't need to go there now, but there's these rather kind of cool SOCIT cards, and what we've created them is PDFs. So what you might want to do is just, if you can, send them or download them to your device like a phone. And I know people love these cards when they're physical, they keep them in a wallet. Now you can keep them on your phone. And on one side it has, this is very useful, by the way. I find this more useful than trying to follow a model. The situation questions, the definition, and the flip side is some examples of simple situation questions, open and closed questions that you might want to ask in a sort of a technical engagement. They're pretty good. Most people like them, so feel free to go to there, and feel free to send to your device.
Quick question
Yeah.
around the situation before the outcome.
Yeah.
I've come across usually very senior execs, CEOs, CIOs, that are more focused on the outcome and the future. So sometimes I reverse the outcome in this situation.
Yeah.
Is that good or bad practice?
No, it's good practice. Let me tell you, I'm really glad you brought that up. Okay, so I think I mentioned this yesterday, that there is a danger, but the higher the level you go, there is a danger in asking situational questions. If you imagine me just asking any situational questions, but starting off with a lot of situational questions, which are, what are you currently doing in this area? What are you currently using in this area? What's your infrastructure look like? And I know, for instance, I used to know someone who's the CIO of, it was a long time ago, so you won't know who it is, but they were the CIO of the ASX in Australia. And they really weren't technical at all. If you would ask those questions, they wouldn't have a clue. However, even if they do know the answers, they probably would say, go somewhere, you're talking to the wrong person. We're going to spend a lot of time on this. And they're right. You could probably get situational information from somewhere else, from people who are coaches within an organization. You can maybe get them from the internet. Salespeople, for instance, and I know you're not salespeople, but salespeople go in and say, tell me about your business, how long you've been around, what do you do? That is the worst situational question you could ask anyone. Ideally, you kind of want to lead with the outcome questions and maybe come back to the situation questions, or summarize your understanding of a situation, which is, if you're going in the CHI meeting, you might say, so the information I've got is you're currently doing this, you're currently using this, you've got this type of infrastructure, how am I doing so far? They're like, great, you understand it. What I'm really interested in, let's start off with, we might come back to some more detail, but what are you trying to achieve here? And that's where they'll turn around and say, okay, that's a good question. And I 100% agree. The more senior the executives, more they're interested about talking about outcomes and challenges and less interested in the situation.
Great.
Okay, so
Paul.
Yes.
Ramesh here. Two things from this questioning model. First, wouldn't we also like to know who would be the decision makers ultimately once a solution is provided? And second, before we go into the trial part of it, wouldn't you summarize everything before you suggest a trial so that both of us are on the same page?
Right, yes. The first one is, you should know ideally who decision makers are before you even go into that meeting, because there is a danger of asking these questions and these questions to the wrong person. So if you do know who the decision maker, half of the outcomes would be what's the outcome that the CIO is looking for, what's the outcome you're looking for, what's the outcome the business is looking for, and what's the outcome the CIO is looking for, if they are the key decision makers, and also the challenges. So you should know that before you go in there, ideally. The trial, you can summarize using the trial. So, as an example, you might say, I'll use it in my world of training. So I understand the outcomes, I've understood the challenges, we're going to understand the impact. So if you had a solution that provided the skills that were required that address, so hang on, I might say, so if you had a solution that addressed the challenges with regards to the skill gaps, but also talked to and addressed the challenges of the mindset, so not just the skill set, but also the mindset. So you were able to achieve that mindset shift as well as the skill set shift. Would that be, that's a sort of solution you'd be looking for? And what you're actually doing is using the trial as a summary.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So good discussion. Summary is discovery is your most powerful tool. Setting up the meeting well is important, and uncovering outcomes and challenges the minimum you should be able to do in the role play. When we get together, everyone here is going to have a role. So the first thing you want to be doing is, once I've populated this entire slide, is to take a photograph of this. You can see your name. So what you want to be looking at is your name, what group you're in, and what letter comes after your name. So look for your name, what group you're in, and what letter. So write that down or take a photograph of it, because if you've got a K after your name, that means you are going to play Kai, and you're going to answer questions with regards to Kai. Now, you will be sent a stakeholder needs analysis via private chat. All the Kais, the stakeholder needs analysis via private chat now by the moderator, Tyler. So he's going to send you that if you are Kai. So that is Ramesh, Leichin, Abhishek, and Sandeep. You're going to get the stakeholder needs analysis sheet, and you want to read that before we meet. Number 2, okay, if you've got an S, you are going to be the scribe or the typer. You will capture the information that the interviewer uncovers, or the interviewers uncover in your team. You will be sent a document in the next session, a Google Doc, that you will be able to populate, and you will be able to open it. If you've got an I next to your name, and you notice there might be a couple of I's, you are an interviewer or interviewers. You've got the pressure on you. You're going to be actually interviewing Kai and asking the SOCIT questions. So have a think about what SOCIT questions you will ask. So interviewers, you really need to know SOCIT. Scribe, you need to know in your head the difference between an outcome and a challenge, because that's what you're going to be looking for as a scribe. And Kai, you need to be able to play Kai from the sheets sent to you. The other thing you will need for the next session is 2 pieces of plain paper and a pen. And we're going to be using those for the listening exercise. So you may also want to bring paper, I suppose, just to write on when you're doing the interviewing. But certainly you need 2 blank sheets of paper. They need to be separate. You're not going to use them for anything other than a specific exercise. 2 blank sheets of paper and a pen. Wow, timing is everything. From a green perspective, I'm very happy with myself because we are finishing spot on time. So is anybody, please put your hand up if you are not sure about what role you're playing when we next get together. Okay, looks like everybody's happy. All right, so that's the end of this session. Thanks very much. That was great. I enjoyed this session. Awesome. Great input. Please keep it coming. Next session, it'll be very much working as teams to test out the whole SOCIT concept, see how you go. And then what we'll be doing after that is, as individuals, you'll be doing interviews and you'll be getting one-on-one coaching. So until then, look forward to seeing you later on in the day, and you know what you're supposed to do. See you then.